Hello everyone and welcome to Inside Procurement, the SmartCube's video forum examining the concepts and ideas that influence procurement and supply chain executives both today and tomorrow. In this episode, we take on an issue that's become more and more prominent as the sophistication of the procurement function has grown over the last 10 to 15 years. It's one that we all recognize as absolutely essential, but we still seem to have disparate views on how and even if this issue can be adequately resolved. And that's the issue of procurement's credibility. In today's video, we'll discuss how and why the issue of procurement's credibility has become particularly important in the current environment, and we'll examine a couple of the key contributing factors for this. We'll then dig into the core elements necessary as a foundation for establishing procurement's credibility in the eye of the stakeholder. But more importantly, I'll identify the one galvanizing force, the essential ingredient that really turns the credibility dial up. I'll then share 3 practical category examples to illustrate how category leaders can take practical steps to improve or reinforce their credibility. And I'll finally close out with my key perspectives on the key signs to look out for to know that you have credibility with your stakeholders. The last 2 decades have seen a sea change in the procurement functions and the procurement executives standing within the organization. I've said this many times, but procurement is no longer the proverbial backwater department, but instead now occupies an important seat at the executive table. This development has been driven by 2 interrelated factors. The first is the clear realization across the C-suite of the value that the function can deliver to the organization. And by value, I don't simply mean cost savings and as a result, direct profit improvement, which is certainly the case. But value also includes procurement ability to contribute to growth through innovation, new product development, and a whole lot more. The second factor is the understanding of what it now takes to realize and deliver this value, the marked improvement in the caliber of the function and its resulting ability to deliver to this value creation remit. So in other words, not only should it be clear that procurement can deliver value, but it clearly can and must be enabled to deliver this value. Now, this ability to deliver value is itself a function of 2 intertwined forces, the caliber of the individuals within the function and their ability to effectively deploy the tools that are at their disposal to realize results. Let's unpack that statement just a little bit. From a caliber of the individual perspective, we've really seen the emergence of the progressive procurement executive, an individual who is driven by what I consider to be several key success traits: strong leadership skills, a clear bias for action, an objective and dispassionate view of their remit, and an underlying, unrelenting adherence to the principle of lowest total cost. However, the ability of this individual to capitalize on the opportunity at hand depends on how well he or she can effectively deploy the tools available to them to enable action and realize results. In other words, it isn't simply the availability of the tools, but the ability to know how to use them and to what end. The galvanizing force in this context is information, or more specifically, intelligence. This is not to be confused with data or technology. Both are touted to be the panacea for many of the function's problems, but at the end of the day, they're merely contributing elements. No, when we say intelligence in this context, I mean data translated with or without technology into insight at the right place and at the right time. Consider the following not uncommon scenarios and ask yourself if this is the case in your enterprise. Marketing services typically accounts for a sizable chunk of spend, but in many companies, it's typically controlled and negotiated and managed outside of the procurement function. The core argument being that procurement doesn't understand the complexities or the requirements of the marketing activities and the marketing function itself. Is this the case in your enterprise? If not, ask yourself why that is, beyond the usual politics of the situation. Have you, as the designated category leader, developed a critical understanding of the market, its size, its structure, dynamics, emerging developments and trends, pricing models that are at play, the supplier landscape, and beyond? Do you get the nuances of what the key levers are for the function, not simply from a cost point of view, but from a quality and creativity and essentially TCO point of view? And is this understanding to a level where you can engage in a vigorous and thoughtful discussion and debate with your marketing counterparts about the merits and demerits of working with a specific set of vendors, technologies, and solutions? It should be clear from these questions that the key to credibility with your marketing counterparts is useful intelligence that's appropriately applied. Not just the data about the spend, but that data coupled with external information, analyzed, thoughtfully processed within the context of your organization to provide you with real insight. Insight that helps you implicitly understand how to help the marketing team meet their goals and objectives, and by extension, the goals and objectives of the company as a whole. Another example is in understanding category economics. In any spend category, direct or indirect, from IT applications to specialty chemicals, the very basis for evaluating, understanding, and interpreting market and pricing movements is to have a fundamental understanding of the economics behind the category itself. This doesn't just mean the final unit cost, nor does it only mean the total cost, that is, incorporating for shipping and repairs and servicing, etc. It certainly is all of that, but it also means understanding the mechanics of each individual element that makes up the final cost. That is, each constituent cost element, how much of the total cost that element makes up, how it moves in relation to other costs, and what influences that cost and what is expected to happen to that cost element as we go forward. This is far more complex than simply having a handle on your spend and a perspective on where that spend will go, based on what your suppliers have told you or your own experience or gut feel. That's not going to be credible and won't cut it with your internal stakeholders. For example, try having that high level of a conversation with your chief counsel about your legal spend, right before you ask him or her to let you get more deeply engaged in the sourcing of outside counsel fees. I think we all realize that won't work, but here's what will work, or will at least begin to make the case that you deserve a seat at the table in managing and sourcing that important chunk of spend at your company. Understand the makeup of cost drivers for all of the specific classes of legal services. Understand the impact of labor rates, so to speak, across the different states that you operate in. Understand the matter types and the related working practices across the regions that you play in. Understand the distribution of the activity by matter type across the different levels of a law firm. Understand the nature of the activity, specialized versus more commoditized. Understand the different sources through which this work can be done, internal versus external, the type of organization involved, etc. In other words, having a credible conversation with your chief counsel is about having a deeper, more nuanced understanding of the cost elements so that you don't sound as if you're the cost guy or the cost gal. Rather, you're there because you get it and you know how to help. Okay, with those two examples, we wrap up part one of our conversation on establishing procurement's credibility. In part two, we'll continue the conversation with one more practical example of how intelligence can play a critical role in driving credibility. We'll then close out the discussion with some parting thoughts on the types of intelligence we should be going after and a discussion of how you'll know when you've achieved the right level of credibility with your stakeholders. All right, as always, if you've enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you'd like to hear more from us, hit the subscribe button. And if you'd like to reach out, email us at info@thesmartcube.com. This was Inside Procurement.